Welcome to the Power Up Podcast. I'm your host, Trevor Scullion. Join me for some powerful conversations with members of the Substation Design Solutions Industry Consortium, the SDSIC. I'll chat with members about the consortium, innovations, how they're implementing different technologies, even some of the projects they're working on to address the growing needs of our power grid. Our guest today is Mark Nelson. Mark is the CAD GIS Administrator for Idaho Power. He's also the co-chair for the SDSIC. Working side by side with Audrey Marich, he has helped us sustain incredible growth through the years and continues to support us into the 10th anniversary year. Hey, thanks for joining me today, Mark.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, you bet. I've been looking forward to this. Been trying to get you on for a while, and we've both been pretty busy trying to nail down the times. I'm glad you could do it. I think, as you know, this podcast was really for the SDSIC members, new and old, getting to know everyone. So why don't we start by talking about your background and your career and how you got to Idaho Power.
All right. Well, I guess my background is I started a long time ago on paper. So back in the 20th century, Trevor.
There you go.
And so I think it was 82 or so is when I graduated from drafting school. How's that?
Oh, wow. Okay.
So my first job was like for a structural engineering consulting firm. And then I went to a manufacturing firm and spent a short time at even Power Engineers, at their original building in Idaho when they were very
really?
small. Yeah, back
Wow.
when they were just in a barn by the airport.
Wow.
Spent a little time there and ended up in Boise eventually with an AEC firm.
Okay.
Spent a couple of years as a truss designer of all things.
Oh, man.
I applied for a drafting job and they said, "Hey, you did pretty good on the math test. You're a truss designer now."
Nice.
Which I actually enjoyed. And eventually ended up at a manufacturing firm. And just as we were transitioning from hard copy to digital, got involved in engineering document management and customizing AutoCAD. And they were pretty advanced there. They sent me to some schools, and that background is what got me in at Idaho Power. They hired me to help transition from their scanned environment and stand up their first engineering document management system. So that's what got me there 28 years ago, of all things.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I remember you and I had a lot of conversations about AutoCAD, 1.6 and tablets and printer plotters and all that stuff.
Yes. And so, yeah, it's amazing that going from AutoCAD with, before it was called MAP and it was ADE, and then the predecessor to what's AUD now, it's yet another third party. So there's a lot of third party things back then. And it's crazy that now we have these suites and collections to just have so many tools that we can do now that we couldn't do back then. And we thought we were pretty advanced. Yeah. So we just kind of transitioned through all those iterations of CAD and DOS and Windows and now we're talking cloud and
yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I remember. We had that discussion when they first put the graphical interface on AutoCAD, right? It's like, wow, menus and icons. Wow.
Yeah, I hate to say it, I still have a CalComp digitizer in my garage for.
There it is.
Can't bring myself to throw it out.
Can't let it go.
World's largest coaster. Yeah.
Good topic of discussion with the neighbors, though, that don't know what the hell it is.
Exactly. But yeah, my job at Idaho Power, I get to support substations and transmission, our power plant design group, our mapping group. And so we have a kind of a small CAD support team of 6 people that
Okay.
support all the business units. We buy the AutoCAD software for everybody so that we can kind of manage versions and customizations and those sorts of things. And then we just partner with IT for servers and resources and usually subject matter experts in the business units to help direct what their needs are. I'm not sure how many other companies have that sort of support model, but it works pretty good for us.
Yeah, that's great, right? Because a lot of times, the CAD teams are just kind of thrown in with IT, and it's a real specialty need trying to set up the CAD systems and hardware for them, right? So that's pretty unique.
Yes.
So let's transition into, I cannot remember a time where you weren't involved with the SDSIC.
So here's the deal. So my first SDS conference was 2015 in New Orleans.
Oh, okay.
And we brought quite an entourage. In fact, some members at Idaho Power, some employees, were part of some of the original discussions that created the SDS. Colleen Ramsey and maybe Aaron Kircher, and probably dropping the wrong names.
Yeah, I remember talking with Aaron. Yeah, for sure.
And so they were there in the beginning, I think. And in 2015, we did a pilot for the SDS tools and Inventor and those sorts of things. And then that's when the substation group reached out to us as support and invited me and my boss at the time, Cody Eckert, to join, and then kind of be engaged and help analyze or understand how the SDS would help us. And so that's what got us started.
Wow. Well, so big shout out to Aaron and Cody for sure, man. They were instrumental there in the early days for sure. I haven't seen Aaron in a while now.
Yeah, he's still there. They're working on some pretty exciting projects up there. So he isn't really engaged in consortium, but he's doing some fun stuff that still super involved. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have a great team there for sure. It's always been interesting to see what comes out, and talking with Aaron, a lot of the early stuff he was doing was bleeding edge.
Yes, bleeding edge. I like that.
Yeah, bleeding edge. Okay, so New Orleans was the first one, and you ran the technology committee for quite a few years, it felt like.
So we had Bob Stoves was the committee chair, and I think he was the first committee chair, Bob Stoves with the Southern Company.
Okay.
And so I was just participating for the first year or two. And then he was in need of the co-chair. And so eventually I caved and I said, all right, I'll help you out there. And I think I was just co-chair for about a year before he moved on. And he gave me that bait and switch. He talked me into being the co-chair, and before long I was the chair. And I think I might have chaired that for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And then Crystal from Hydro stepped up to help me out as the co-chair.
Right. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, so I remember that. I remember Crystal doing that with you for at least 2 years.
Yep. She was super helpful, and she joined us, I think, after Alexandria's, the face-to-face in Alexandria. She started helping me out, so that was great to have someone from. Because she did some pretty cool stuff with Vault back in the day.
Right.
They had a lot to offer.
Yeah. I mean, you guys you grew that group and came up with a lot of like standards documents. We got quite a few recorded videos from some of the monthly calls. You ended up with a pretty big engagement for that group.
back then, there's just so many things going on at once between licensing changes with the vendors, and the cloud was starting to come into play, and I know you were working on the white papers on all the cybersecurity stuff, and there was just so many things going on, cyber wise, that impacted those of us in the background just trying to. I used to joke around. It's like, that's technology team. We're in the background giving you all those, making it safe for you to use those tools, but it's the folks in the other groups that get to do all the cool stuff you can show on a screen. Dang it.
Yeah. We got to wrestle with servers and hardware.
Right. What do you have to show for your headache?
I got a headache. That's it. Well, I remember 2016, 17, well, even 18, it was any mention of the cloud and people just shut down. Like we couldn't talk about putting things out in the cloud. It was a much bigger issue.
Yes, and there were some high-profile mistakes that had been made with some, in the cloud or with data or those sorts of things. And I think we spent a lot of time in those days, pre-pandemic. People weren't as proficient with Teams and Zoom and all those things to work and collaborate remotely, and utilities. I think one of the biggest challenges we had was just utilities working with outside consultants and sharing design files back and forth in a secure way that regulators would approve, those sorts of things, just so we can get work done.
Right.
And but you're right. Then if you ever said the word cloud out loud, I'm gonna get escorted out of the room.
Well, and massive difference doing support or CAD support for remote folks, right? I mean, you can't walk over to their desk and say, "Here, let me sit down. Let me take control here for a second." Right? Trying to do it all remotely was a real game changer with the pandemic.
Yes, and the ability or the cost for hardware, for some things we need to do was so different. That seemed like we spent a lot of time on that. It's just finding the right specs and the like, and that's what the technology team spent a lot of time on. It's just helping people get the right tools so that they can run their software. Try to get things done.
I always felt bad for the folks that were sent home to work and they had just one speed higher than dial up. They had to download their 10 gigabyte files to work on CAD. I mean, torture.
Yes. And a lot of the vendors assume that we all have high speed internet everywhere we go, but
right.
A lot of us don't.
Yeah, for sure. Any remote area. I mean, I'm located in Canada. We got tons of remote areas where you won't get that kind of high speed. So it's pretty tough on a lot of folks. So, hey, let's change focus here and talk a little bit about the chairs and co-chairs and all the different people that have been involved over the years. You just mentioned a few, and one of the changes that you guys made, yourself and Audrey really now running the whole consortium, being the charter change you made to bring in co-chairs from engineering firms. And that's been such a huge advantage in trying to help find more folks to take those seats and not put it all on utility folks and utility employee members of the SDSIC.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to touch base on that myself. It's been impressive to me that everyone has really understood the original vision from before my time, that you really wanted yourself and David Milks and all those others that really had that vision in the beginning, that utility driven, utility problems to solve, and we weren't competing against each other, and we're trying to share information and help each other. And so it's been impressive that the charter has constantly evolved over the 10 years,
right,
to accept changes in the industry and what the consulting firms have to offer and our software partners, and that it grew to be even more, I guess, more software vendors to help us and more contractors with specialties that are more proven, and all those things just help the utilities out. And the fact that we've been able to evolve the charter to support that and to allow other people besides utility members be co-chairs, and it's pretty humbling, really, to see just how many people are involved and how many have been in chairs and co-chairs, and added so much value to the organization and grown. And all those things that we worried about of conflict or selling and too much sales pitch, all those sorts of things that of concern haven't really happened. I mean, there's a little of that. And just everyone's been so professional. Today, I know people from so many different companies across the US and Canada, and names I can pick up the phone and call if I have an issue, and or to bounce ideas off of, and far beyond just my utility counterparts, but just everybody.
Yeah, and you think the engineering firms are, I mean, they're obviously competing for services and things, but they've been absolutely incredible over the years. We've never had any conflict or any issues going on. They've been super professional, focused on solutions and ideas and concepts. And well, as I know personally, they brought a lot of requests for software functionality. They work with multiple utilities, right? They had a different perspective, I would say. So it's awesome to have them more involved now with co-chair positions.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And fun to kind of look at some of the, not just co-chairs and chairs, but just utility members that have started off at a utility or a consulting firm and kind of moved around as they grew in their careers.
Yeah, right.
And learned even more things that supported the consortium and take that stuff back to their organization. It's been a great proving ground for so many people.
Yeah, careers, so true.
And self-satisfaction and those sorts of things.
No, and you had a great point that, you meet people at the face-to-face. The pandemic, we took a hit, but having the face-to-face meeting, actually, meeting with somebody and getting to know them a little bit, it makes it a heck of a lot easier to send them an email or, call them up and, ask for advice or maybe how they're solving something that you remember them talking about at the consortium. It's a lot easier after you met someone face to face.
Absolutely.
It's a pretty common theme. I think pretty much everybody that I've talked to so far on the podcast has brought up the fact that we're mostly introverts in the engineering.
No kidding. It seems like most of the co-chairs and chairs, we kind of start off reluctantly. Everyone wants to, I'll do anything you need, but don't make me get in front of a audience of any kind. Like you said, us introverts. Right. And it's been so good for so many of us that actually did it to get over some of those fears and get more comfortable sharing ideas and coordinating with other people. And you can see a lot of that personal growth for folks we've known for 4 or 5 years that have been engaged.
Yeah, so true. Yeah. You look at yourself, Audrey, Jeremy Morton, Josh Clark. You see folks that really didn't want to get up there in the beginning. And I think you mentioned it last time we were on the leadership call. Jeremy's one of the only folks that doesn't need a microphone now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is that kind of, I don't even know, as you said, kind of humbling. I don't know how it survived for so long because we started as such a small group, and the idea was always to keep it as a kind of a TED talk, but less formal than an IEEE meeting, and making no bad ideas, lots of kind of easy-go-lucky, panel discussions and round tables, and it keeps going that way. even though we're going to be probably near 300 people at this face-to-face, it's definitely kept it somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, we say it often that this is a safe place for people to try to learn to lead a group or take on a project or write a white paper or a best practice and those sorts of things.
Right.
And it truly is. You're not going to get anybody overly critique you. You're going to get a lot of folks that kind of thank you and encourage you and help you get back up there and continue to improve.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, there's a lot of support, and even the monthly calls that everybody's been talking about for the committees, right? And just keeping those discussions open, and a lot of times nobody wants to ask a question, but it's pretty open. There's not really anybody jumping on anybody, saying, hey, we already answered that, or it's a very open conversation, just trying to figure out solutions and kind of shout outs to folks to see, has anybody solved this problem already?
Exactly. And to me, I always refer to the consortium as kind of part of my therapy. And I say it jokingly, but it is true. And sometimes you just kind of to hear that other utilities or companies are in the same kind of place. They're struggling with the same sorts of problems. They have the same sort of constraints with regulators or IT or cybersecurity. Those are all real things they have to be concerned about to solve and still get design work done. And
right.
We all think that we're the least proficient or the least technical. Everyone's got to be further along than us.
Right.
And then you get to work in these groups and you find out, hey, we're doing some stuff good too.
Yeah.
And something we're proud of and like to share. And you also, your neighbor sitting next to you is doing the same thing. And so you learn from each other and you find out that you're more advanced or you're more progressive than you think. And you have lots to offer. And so I encourage everybody to appreciate that everyone has something to offer to this organization, for sure.
Yeah, great advice. Yeah, and it's been a pretty common theme, right? We show up at the conference, even for someone like myself, you go meet a customer, and they'll show you something like you'll think this is goofy, but here's the script I made for Inventor, and here's what it does, and I go, that's pretty awesome. It's not goofy at all.
Yeah, one of the more common comments you might hear in the hallway of a conference would be, "Hey, can I get a copy of that?
Yeah,
can you send that to me?"
That's right. Can I get a copy of that for me? Yeah, that's especially around some of the vault stuff, right? It's been a pretty common theme.
Absolutely.
Well, Mark, I just want to say, while you're on, and the amount of work you guys did, you and Audrey, behind the scenes, the pandemic really threw us for a loop. I think we were all set to go down to Dominion in Virginia. We had the venue picked. We were already collecting conference fees and getting sponsors, and then boom, we had to cancel the whole thing. And boy, did we scramble. It started a huge amount of work for the leadership team.
Yeah, that was another thing. It's just the resilience of the organization to kind of pivot the way we did. We definitely didn't want to lose any momentum. We did so much planning, and people had already, had ideas for courses and those sorts of things. And, I'm glad that we were able to put together that virtual conference and keep the momentum going. And we thought that would be to just get through that 1 year, right?
Yeah. And it kept going and going and going.
And not just that. And then we thought maybe we have another face-to-face that next spring, and then no. And then it was when it's just a constant sliding scale through the whole pandemic. And when people, even if we could do it, can people travel yet? And well, do people have it in their budget yet? And all those sorts of things. And it took a while to get through that, and the fact that you and Audrey could continue to adjust. And we tried so many different things. One year we couldn't use Teams or Zoom, or everybody seemed to be not allowed to have something, and it was constantly trying to figure out what kind of virtual tools would work for everybody as best as we could.
Yeah, and it's been, I mean, you sell yourself short. I don't think a lot of folks know just how much time that you yourself spends with me and Audrey, and you and I doing the website, the database things we did, the video editing after all those pandemic virtual conferences. We had a lot of dead air to remove from a lot of videos. There's a lot of work that goes on in your personal time, and you and I spent nights and weekends doing stuff like that. I'm glad. I'm really happy we were able to keep things moving.
And which I think we did that in such a way that now we learn so much on, like everybody, the whole pandemic, just working remotely, and everyone understands how to run a Teams meeting now, and everyone has the equipment they need. I mean, how many times folks, well, I can listen, but I don't have a speaker on my desktop, or I don't have a microphone, or I don't have, all the things that we struggled through that first few. And now with the pandemic mostly over, we think. Yeah. We learned so much there that we'll continue to have those skills, going forward.
And I think of it's kind of like at the beginning, the first virtual meeting, everyone was trying to get their cameras on, and they had a bunch of backgrounds. Everyone was kind of having fun with it, trying to make it creative. And like 2 years in, it's like, get on a meeting and we don't need cameras. It's fine.
Yeah, right. No, I'm not combing my hair today. I'm not turning that camera on. That's right.
That got goofy. It was a strange time, when you're talking to someone and trying to look at the camera and they're not looking you in the eye. They're trying to read something or do a presentation. It was a very awkward time for everybody.
It's great now that we're doing face to face. Had we not kept, like you said, the momentum going on, and didn't maintain those 2 virtual conferences a year, it just felt like that first one in the fall of last year, we just kind of hit the ground running. Like there wasn't that break almost. There was so much energy and so much excitement to get back together, and we had such great presentations, and it just felt like there wasn't that break, and we still had, just having heard everyone's voice and seen them on those virtual conferences and our monthly meetings. It just it tied it all kind of back together, I thought.
Yeah, it's so true. We just hit the ground running. But I think a lot of folks, you're absolutely right. A lot of folks were really excited to see people face to face after all those Zoom meetings and calls.
Yes. And for me, it's just exciting to kind of sit around, or in the hallway, or at dinner, and listen to the excitement of, especially people new, or the first consortium, or their new designers, or just getting engaged in this sort of stuff. And they were just so energized, and talking about what they could be, coulda, woulda, shoulda, and what's next, and which is a big part of what this is about, is to kind of breathe energy and excitement into changing design practices and using new tools and doing things better, and making the job of doing design work more fun, I think.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and I mean, you've been involved so long now, and running the committee for such a long period, and now the co-chair, and all the work that you do. What would be your advice for some new folks coming in and maybe listening to this podcast, and then they're going to head to Nashville for the first time?
Well, definitely make it to every monthly meeting you can, and or to give advice to a newbie is to offer to do a presentation for your monthly meeting. Offer to show something that you do that you think can help everybody else, and kind of break the ice on sharing. And also, if you're a mechanical, an inventor user, maybe sit through some of the other committee meetings, and if you can, and see what problems the electrical committee is dealing with, or civil, and because we're finding that over time that they're all kind of related. The more you know, what speak a little bit of the other language, and what I'm leading up to is get involved so that someday you'll become the co-chair and eventually a chair. And,
No, that was great, but that's terrific advice, because I kind of forgot about that. There would be folks coming in that would be, from the physical design side, and they show up in electrical meetings, and sure enough, they're like, oh, I didn't know you were doing that. I could actually give you more data for that. If you need that from the physical side, and vice versa. The electrical guys are, they end up talking to somebody doing inventor and the physical side, and they would say, hey, I could, pass you this data. We could put it in Vault, and you can grab it. There's just all these conversations that happen, and just entering a couple of different meetings.
And especially if you start talking about the data management and Vault, and that what the technology team deals with, and this is where IT people are people too. Nice. Trevor, nice. You wanted me to say it.
Man, I'm gonna get T-shirts made now.
Now we can get the T-shirts made. But yeah, we've had a couple shared meetings in the past where we've kind of brought either electrical or inventor together with some Vault people, and sure enough, there's like you just said, it's like, wait a minute, we can store that there, or we can share that with these other disciplines. So much to do in that space. Yeah, get involved in little bites, and volunteer to be a chair or co-chair, or help them out. If you see a chair that's kind of overwhelmed because they're trying to do the schedule and maybe do a presentation and do those sorts of things,
right,
I would suggest reach out and offer to take on one of those monthly meetings for them.
That's
the more of us that do that, the better.
Yeah, we're all volunteers, right? Nonprofit. Nobody's making money from this. We're all putting in extra time, and you come away with a bunch of help and a bunch of other assistance, and maybe you can get a copy of something that'll help you. So it's
exactly
all for the better. I love the advice of do a presentation, right? Because on the monthly call, you don't have to get up in front of the crowd. You can just do it in front of your computer, or just another Zoom meeting, and you get the ability to share your CAD system if you want to open a project and walk someone through how you did it or what you did. And a lot of times, somebody mentioned on the podcast last time, was just show and tell. It's fine. You don't need to come on and, be an expert at something. You just show and tell. Show us what you do.
I think there can be a misconception that, people use these software tools and drafting in general, that, the software does the work. I mean, that's what people will say.
Right.
But that's not really true. I mean, it's just a tool, right? And designers and drafters and engineers can be so creative, just like you would any other discipline, where you got all those tools in your toolbox, and no new two mechanics, do it the same way.
Yeah.
And you just learn from each other. And I think software and these design workflows, that is true. There's so many people think of some ingenious ways to use software tools that, as they were never intended. And you've been in the room where a software provider was surprised that their software could do something.
Yeah.
How'd you do that?
Yeah, shocked.
Right. And so I think it's that show and tell kind of hit that creativity button, I think, on folks.
Yeah, brilliant. Yep, so true. Well, and it's pretty, I think it's been highlighted with Chat GPT and all the AI stuff now. I mean, you get 5 people to use the AI and have a conversation with the chat bot, and you get 5 completely different responses and things. And depending on the creativity of the question, you get a very
Right.
different response, right? So it's, yeah, no, that's a very good point. And you're right. As a software vendor myself, that's one of my joys of going to these presentations is just seeing how some folks have creatively used solutions, and we leave thinking, wow, I never thought of doing it that way.
Yes, and that's kind of I appreciate that people like to work remote and those sorts of things, but I still enjoy going to the office and walking through the design groups and they kind of hold me accountable. Can you do something for me to improve this process that's kind of new? And that's one of the satisfactions of my job is helping them take a few clicks out here and there, and so people can concentrate more on the design and less on the drafting sort of thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's true. When you're walking the halls, right? It kind of sparks a memory and say, "Oh, I was supposed to ask Mark about something."
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. That's
I
been
know.
the lonely part of the pandemic.
Yes, I know we're all introverts, but I think there's a few secret extroverts, but it kind of comes and goes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, it's definitely different working from home because my dog stares at me all day. I have no idea what he wants. He's just looking at me. Well, that's great, Mark. Hey, so before we close everything out, man, I always like to ask. So, what do you get out of the SDSIC?
Well, Trevor, thanks for asking that question. We did a pilot in 2015, and we learned so much about intelligent design and where we were at as a company at the time. We didn't adopt that at the time, but we learned kind of some things we needed to do, and we've done those. We've updated our standards and naming conventions and a lot of things so to prepare us for the future to take advantage of this. And the company, I appreciate, let me stay involved and just kind of pay attention to the consortium.
Yeah.
And what it brought to the table. And I've learned so much from the other utilities and some of the questions people are asking that helped me bring those questions back to my job. So it's helped me so much in my personal career growth. I feel like I got so much more out of it than I put in, and I think most people would think that. But just that you go to these things or you talk to your counterparts and you find out that you're on the right track, or maybe you're not on the right track, but you can save yourself making mistakes others have made. We all want to make our own mistakes, not ones that everyone's already done for us, right?
Right.
So I think it's been great for me to just stay energized and like I said earlier, just be in the hallway and listen to the excitement of other folks and what they're doing, and it keeps me, I think, motivated and energized when I'm back solving problems for my company.
Right.
Because it's, you get so busy in your own job and all the stress is there, and it helps when you get back and talk to these kind of people that are still so excited about being in design and solving problems and doing cool stuff. Lots of people out there doing cool stuff. And, but I appreciate that being a member of the consortium has allowed me to meet so many interesting, smart people that really cared about moving our industry forward.
Yeah, that's great, man. It's so good to hear. And that's true. I mean, we're at a point with, at least on the technology side, well, I'd say everything, maybe the workload, it's just so much going on. in the world now. And it's, you mentioned before, AutoCAD, all we had to learn was DOS. You're good to go. Yeah. You put everything on a floppy or a server. But now there's so much going on. It's too hard to do your job and keep up with all of the changes, all of the things coming out. So it's so much better to get on a monthly call. And as a community, if everybody is share the information they're finding, it make it a hell of a lot quicker for all of us. And yeah, get a lot more.
Absolutely. And you think about, the analogy of, learning to read, first they spend so much time teaching their kids to read until they reach the point that now they read to learn.
Yeah, right.
I feel like that's the way these software tools are. They've grown so much and improved, and we have so many good workflows and best practices now that these tools are becoming, now it's to solve the problems and do the work. I mean, there's so many people now that know how to do these things, and we're past the learning to read part. Now we're putting it all together and reading to learn, I should say.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I love it. Well, Mark, I really appreciate your time. I'm glad we were finally able to get here. I think it's great for everyone to know what goes on behind the scenes, and we appreciate you. I appreciate you. All the work you do as a co-chair now, and all the years you've been helping with everything from the website to video editing to leadership decisions. It's been absolutely amazing to have you with us and support us. And big shout out to Idaho Power, your leadership, your management team, for allowing us to have access to you and answering emails and doing everything that you do, man. We really appreciate you.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate that. It's been a great talk. And I encourage anyone else to listen to all these other podcasts you put together. Great conversations.
Yeah, awesome, Mark. Yeah, anybody bumps into Mark down in Nashville, just remember to say thanks and at least come by and say hi.
Absolutely. Thanks again.
All right, thanks a lot, Mark. Thank you for listening to the Power Up Podcast today. If you enjoyed this conversation and you're not yet a member of the SDSIC, join for free at sdsconsortium.com. Be part of the community and all these great conversations. And maybe you'll be the next guest on the Power Up Podcast.